Bank of Guam Senior Vice President and Chief Economist Joe Bradley says the Internal Revenue Code is designed for, quote, a large resource-rich industrialized and relatively closed economy. Guam, however, he says, is none of these.
We are a small, relatively resource-poor, unindustrialized, and wide-open economy.
Bradley is one of more than a handful of members of the recently reconvened Guam Tax Commission, which met for the first time in 8 years today. And while there are over 79,000 pages in the IRC, a very small fraction of that, he says, actually applies to Guam.
Because of that, the Internal Revenue Code is kind of an unwieldy tool for our taxing authorities to wield. And I think we could probably do something better than that.
Doing something better, or at least exploring the options of the tax code, is part of the goal. Senator Michael Nicholas is the chairman of the commission.
The Guam Tax Commission is able to explore whether or not we're going to delink from the existing federal code, reform our tax code, and completely change our tax system.
And while it's existed in the past, a recent public law now allows the commission to look into options the federal government gave our island in respect to being able to explore our own tax future.
Right now, our tax system mirrors the U.S. tax system. And so whenever the United States government changes their tax code for the benefit of the United States, the whole country, ours automatically changes regardless of whether or not it's actually good for us out here on Guam as a small territory.
But why is this even being considered? Sir Nicholas says when there are policy changes made by the U.S. government, they have impacts here at home.
And over the years, it has resulted in many mandates that have costed the people of Guam tens of millions of dollars that may not have been mandates the people of Guam would have wanted to actually adopt.
It's not to say, however, that delinking would not have its impacts as well. For instance, certain federal funds a lot of the time is in relation with Guam being a U.S. tax jurisdiction.
If we delink, the question becomes how do those various federal relationships get affected, whether it's Medicaid, Medicare, Section 30, our bonds that we float in the U.S. markets. How would those be impacted by delinking? We need to fully understand that before we even consider whether or not we're going to move forward on this.
The Commission is now tasked with reviewing whether delinking from the existing federal code is something the territory should actually consider before formulating a final recommendation, which according to Sir Nicholas could take a very long time. Reporting for Guam's News Network, I'm Ken Quintanilla.